Short rows in knitting and crochet are used to give shape to different things, and all short rows are rows that are cut short, so they're not worked all the way to the end of the row, they're simply finished a little bit sooner. So they are great for shaping necklines, for shaping bust darts, for shaping heels and socks, and in this case we're going to use them to shape the sleeves for the Heyday cardigan. Now the way they work with the sleeves is that you're going to work short rows up to close to the back, and then you're going to come here and close to the back again, and then you're going to come back and work a little bit further, and then a little bit further on the return pass, and then a little bit further on the forward pass, and then a little bit further on the return pass. And what that does is create a wedge in your sleeve so that the top of the sleeve is wider than the end of the cuff of the sleeve, because that's the shape of our arms, right? Our arms are thinner at the bottom than at the top. So that's what we want to create with our sleeve. But this technique that I'm going to show you can be used for any short rows, and I know there are different ways of doing short rows in Tunisian crochet. This is the way that I've developed for my patterns, and it works really well for me. So if you have a different way of doing short rows, feel free to use whichever technique you like, but this is how I do the short rows, okay? So the first thing you're going to do is work your row as normal until the point where your pattern tells you to stop. So in this case, in the Heyday cardigan, I'm going to work the first sleeve and then the back, and then I'm going to go all the way to this spot over here, which is about 4 or 3 stitches after my back. Okay, so here I have worked 2 3 stitches past my marker, which is where my pattern indicates. Depending on which pattern you're working on or which size you're making, this spot might be different. And then I'm going to return pass, and this is going to act like my new end stitch. So I'm going to yarn over and pull through one only. Now I don't want to miss this end stitch, so what I'm going to do is place a marker on it so that I can find it next time I come back this way, because end stitches tend to get lost during short rows. And then I continue I continue with my return pass as normal. So yarn over, pull through 2 all the way until the other end of my short row, which in this case is where my other sleeve is. And we're going to do something a little bit different on that side. All right, I am on the other side of my row. So here is my marker, and according to my pattern, I need to return pass 1, 2, and 3 more. And there I will stop. So now I'm going to work my way back the way I came, stopping right here. So this is why it's called a short row, because it stops short from the end, right? So instead of going all the way to the end on my return pass, I stop there. But to avoid a gap here, we're going to do something that I call a double loop. So double loops are a very easy way to close those gaps created by short rows. So this is your new first stitch or first vertical bar. Normally we skip it and go to the next one, right? Because this acts as our first stitch. But in this case, we are actually going to work in it. So you kind of have to hold on to this loop on your hook so it doesn't get lost. Insert your hook into that first loop and pull your yarn through. Now this first loop that you had there before, now this is called your double loop. And just like we mark the end stitch, you might want to mark the double loop so that you don't miss it on the way back. Then you're just simply going to continue working on your second loop. And in this case, I'm working Tunisian simple stitch. So I only go through my vertical bar and pull up a loop. And then you're going to continue until you reach the other end where we have this end stitch, and I'm going to show you how to work past the end stitch. Okay, so here I have worked until 1 stitch before this marked end stitch. So I'm going to work that other stitch as normal. And then this end of the short row before is going to be worked as a regular end stitch. So I remove my marker and I'm going to find the 2 side vertical bars, which again might be easier depending on your yarn or harder. and pull through. Okay, and there's my end stitch, and then I'm going to work the next stitch as normal. So just pull up a loop from the vertical bar, and I'm going to do 3 stitches in this case. 1, 2, and 3. And this number of stitches is going to change depending on your size or whatever project you're working on. So you can see already that over here there's a bit more height to this side, so that wedge is being formed. And just like before, we're going to return pass, so 1 and stitch, only 1 loop, and then yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And just like before, I want to mark this end stitch. There it is. So that I don't lose it on the way back again. And then I continue to resolve my short row on the other end. So every time you resolve a short row on an end stitch, you simply work that last stitch as a regular end stitch as normal, and then continue. The resolving the short row on the return pass with the double loop looks a little bit different, but I'm going to show you now how to do that. Okay, so I have return pass almost to my double loop. So there is my double loop, and then I have 1 stitch and 2 stitches before that, or 2 loops. So I'm going to yarn over and pull through 1 and then 2. So here, all I have left is my double loop before the rest of my stitches of the sleeve. So I'm going to remove my marker, and then I'm going to pull through these next 2 loops at the same time, and the live loop on my hook. So I'm going to kind of decrease that double loop. So I yarn over and I'm going to pull through 1, 2, and 3. So that's the live loop, the double loop, and the next stitch. And that is 1 stitch worked. So then I'm going to work 2 more. 1 and 2. And just like before, I'm going to leave the rest of my stitches unworked, and then I'm going to work a new double loop in this case. So here's my first loop, and pull up a new loop, and there is my new double loop. I'm going to mark it so I don't lose that one, and I'm going to continue. Now here, let me show you. Here is where my double loop that I worked on is. On the way back, when I work past it, I'm going to completely ignore it. I'm going to omit it. So I'm only going to work on the vertical bars of stitches. And if you see, when I work the next stitch, you see how wide it is? It's going to kind of shrink up. I pull a little bit, and there you go. And now it's just going to sit there behind my work, and it's going to disappear into the background. So later on, if you really pay attention to your work, you might see it. And if you tighten things up a little bit more, you might be able to tighten it up. But there are no visible gaps anymore. And again, you can see how this side is taller than this end. So that is how you work short rows in Tunisian crochet. So you have your double loops on the return pass, and you have your end stitches on the forward pass. Sometimes you might end up with many end stitches and many return passes, and you'll have to resolve them all in one go, which is what happens at the end of the sleeve in the Heyday cardigan. But it's the same story, the same system. Just work your double loop and then return pass it with the next stitch. So I'm going to show you how to resolve the double loop again, because that might be tricky. So I'm just going to pretend that I'm working backwards. So I'm return passing here. All right, so I'm going to work until the double loop is the next loop on my hook. There it is. So I have my live loop and then my double loop. gonna remove my marker, and then to resolve it, I'm going to yarn over and pull through my live loop, my double loop, and the next loop on my hook. 1, 2, 3, and there you go. And then I can continue my row. And if I'm going back, if I'm still not finished with my short rows, if I need to make another one, then I create, oh, let's see what happened there. I create a new double loop, pull through, there you go, there's my double loop. And then I can continue working. And just like before, if I'm going to pass by a double loop, I'm simply going to ignore it. There's my double loop. Going to ignore it and go to the next stitch. And there you go. I hope that is nice and clear.